Okay, we're back. So we're going to create this table, and this table is going to have all of these fields. Now, the first field that we're going to work on is going to be the student ID. Now, generally, every table that you create should have at least one field. Well, it should have one field that is something of a primary key. What that means is like every record is going to be different from everybody else's record. And you might think, well, how often would a record be exactly the same? And it does happen, and when it does happen, it messes up the database. So you need something that makes every record unique. Here's an example of how this could happen. Fred Smith has a son. Fred Smith is going to college at JCC. Fred Smith has a son who's also going to college at JCC. Fred Smith's son, his name is also Fred Smith. Well, Fred Smith and Fred Smith's son both live at the same house, both have the same address, both have the same phone number. Both of them have pretty much all of their records are going to be identical. They have same name, same address, same phone number, going to the same school, everything's going to be the same. So what we need is a way to make every record unique. And this is something that's called a primary key. Now these exist all over the place. When you're a student, you have a student ID, you have a student number. So that is your primary key for JCC. When you go to work, you have an employee ID. When you go to your bank, you'll have a member ID. When you go to Sam's Club, you'll have a member ID. When you go to Planet Fitness, you'll have a member ID. Each of these things, what these are, is these are a unique identifier that make you different than everybody else. If you have one of these things, if you're going to create a table and you have this unique identifier, a student ID, employee ID, you can use that. If you don't have something like that, you can let Access create one for you, and that's what this auto number is. And what this does is it's going to create, the first record is going to be is going to have an ID of 1. The second record is an ID of 2, and it's just going to keep adding until, as every time you add a new record, it's going to add a new number. So we'll go through and create these fields here. We're going to create these 10 fields, and we'll do it here. So we're going to create this. It's going to be called student ID, or SID, and we say it's going to be an auto number, and it's going to be. Now, you don't have to do these descriptions. It's just kind of helpful. Let's see, what's our next one is last name, first name. Okay, last name, or L name. Let's put the caps. We're going to leave short text, and down here is what we said we want the field size to be 10. So down here where it says field size, we're going to change this to 10. Whoops. Down to 10. And we go first name, F name, whoops. Short text. And we'll just go back and do this, and then more time, 10. Now this next one is going to be different. Middle initial, short text. And we said we only want its field to be 1. So we're going to change this from 255 to 1. So this is going to keep people from typing in their entire middle name, because we really only want their middle initial. And then we go to the, whoops, we're going to go to street address, city, state, postal, okay. Whoops. Street address, and we said, that can be 15. City. State, short text. This time we say we want we want this to only be 2. Excuse me. We want this to be 2 because we don't want people typing in the entire state. So we're going to limit that to 2. Postal short text. We're going to leave this as text. Now you might be tempted to change a postal to a zip code to a number, but really you only use numbers on things that you can do math on. You can't do math on a phone number or a social security number or an employee ID. You can't do any math on those things. So generally we keep those as text. So we're going to say postal, and we're going to limit this to 5. Now you have to think of, whoops, I'm sorry, zip code. And you have to think about some things, because I've said that my postal code can only be 5. Well, this would limit me if I was like dealing with people from Canada, because Canada has a 6-character postal code. It's actually letter number, letter number, letter number. So these are things that you have to think about when you're creating one of these tables, but we're just going to leave this as postal with 6 digits. And then we're going to go major and hours complete. So major. We said this is going to be 10. And then HComp. Short text is going to be a number. And we are done. So we've created these 10 fields that's going to make up our table. So now I'm going to go, now what I've done, I created this table and I named it students, and then I went in and I changed the fields. Now I want to go back to datasheet view. So you see that this little button before, there was a triangle, a ruler, and a pencil. It now looks like a kind of a spreadsheet. That kind of tells you that when you click this, you're going to go back into datasheet view. Now when I click this, first thing it tells me is I have to change I have to save this table. And the reason it tells me this is because I've changed the structure of this table. When I first came to this table, I named it students and it let me in. There were no fields. The only field that was up here was ID and auto number. That was the only thing that was up here. And then I added these other fields. So I've changed the structure of this table. And so now it tells me that I need to save it. And I will say yes. And now when I go, I'm back in datasheet view, and you'll see here's my table with all of these fields that I created. And over here, you'll see that I have an object that's a table. That's what this little icon stands for. This is a table icon. So I have a table called students, and that's what I'm in right now. So when I go in here, and I can't do anything with SID, with student ID, because that's going to be an auto number. So I can't type anything in that one. So here, I'm going to start typing my first student. I'll use some of my information. I'll use my name anyway. So Brewer, whoops, gotta get my cap lock off. Brewer, Chris, A. Now if I try to type my middle name's Alan, it won't let me go any further because I limited the character size to 2. My address, 1212, this is not my address. Oh. Oops. Louisville, KY. If I try to type KEN, see, it won't let me do that. It won't let me type Kentucky. So we'll go to KY and 40212. My major is, we'll just say IT, and then hours complete 55. So, boom, there's my first record. I've created my first record. Now, I'm going to show you something a little bit that's going to creep you out a little bit. This is going to make you a little bit nervous. But watch what happens when I just try to shut this down. I'm just going to hit X and shut this thing down. And it just closed. It didn't ask me to save it or anything. It just closed it. It didn't do those. So when you first time you do this, it may creep you out a little bit because it's not there. It doesn't ask you to save it. But the only time you have to worry about saving anything is when you change the structure of a table, not when you change a record. So the philosophy of this is, and let me show you that it is still there. I'm going to open Access back up, and I'm going to open up my first database. And whenever you see this enable content, for the purposes of this class, go ahead and hit enable content. And here's my students table. I opened it up, and there's my information. It's still there. Didn't save it. It automatically saves. So the purpose of this is, think about Amazon again. There's nobody at Amazon that every time an item is sold or every time an item is put in the inventory, there's nobody that's hitting save. That database is automatically changing. There are hundreds of people using that database at the same time. When you go to your bank, you're not the only person that's accessing or you're not the only person in that database at that time. So when you go to Target and you swipe your debit card because you bought something, that record on the database on the bank side is automatically going to be saved. The money's going to be taken out of your account and is automatically going to be saved. Nobody's hitting save on that. But if I went in and I added a new field to that table in that database, then I would have to save it because I've changed the structure of the table. So we're going to close this video out right now, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how to create a form. So, be back in a bit.